Thank you all for attending the EducationUSA webinar on Why I Live on Campus. First of all, I'd like to introduce EducationUSA briefly. EducationUSA is a U.S. Department of State network of advising centers in more than 170 countries worldwide. We promote study abroad to international students by offering accurate, comprehensive, and current information about U.S. colleges and universities. In Japan, we have 6 EducationUSA centers: Sapporo, Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, Fukuoka, and Okinawa. And those are run by U.S. Embassy, consulates, and Fulbright Japan. If you have any questions, please contact EducationUSA Center nearby. This Saturday, April 2nd, EducationUSA Japan will hold the Spring College Fair and 3 webinars. Please come and meet with more than 40 U.S. college and university representatives from 19 different states. At the fair, for more information, please check our website. Now, I'd like to welcome our guest speakers from the United States. Ms. Erin Guth from Beloit College and Ms. Jenn Pham from Goucher College. Erin and Jenn, thank you so much for attending this webinar and staying very late at the United States. I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for joining our presentation this afternoon. We're glad to be with you on living on campus. We will be talking a bit about the benefits of living on campus on a liberal arts college in the United States. So just to get started, to tell you a little bit about ourselves, my name is Erin Guth. I'm the Director of International and Transfer Admissions at Beloit College. We're a small residential liberal arts and science college located in the state of Wisconsin.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenn and I'm the Assistant Director of International Student Recruitment at Goucher College. We are also a small liberal arts college, but located in Baltimore, Maryland. So we're just gonna go ahead and jump in. As Erin mentioned, we're going to talk about our experiences as a liberal arts college, talk about what is liberal arts college, talk about a wonderful organization that we're a part of, but then also highlight residential living on our campuses. So first and foremost, what is a liberal arts college? If you're not familiar, there's typically a large emphasis on an undergraduate study in liberal arts and science education. So what does that mean within our name of liberal arts? Essentially, these types of education include humanities, arts, sciences, social sciences, but again, the primary focus is with undergraduate students. Now, liberal arts colleges are typically smaller in size. You'll see from both of our institutions, we're about less than 2,500 students. So what that means is that there are also smaller class sizes and a smaller student to faculty ratio. So at near the end of this presentation, Erin and I will both highlight both of our campuses and talk a little bit about what makes our campuses a little bit different from each other, although we have similar types of classrooms and types of students. Again, we are a 4-year bachelor degree school, typically with an emphasis on the liberal arts curriculum. So not only We typically do not offer as many pre-professional programs and skills as you would see at a large research institution, but we tend to highlight broad skills within critical thinking and writing and how to solve problems in today's world. So we really try to apply these things onto our students to help them become great thinkers. There's also a focus on mentorship and advising. So more than likely at a liberal arts college, you will have, if not one, more than maybe 2 or 3 different types of mentors or advisors on our campuses to really help guide you through your whole college career, which if you are anything like me, I need a lot of hand holding in life, not just in school, but it's really beneficial to have a really strong support group in case you find yourself struggling either academically, socially, even athletically, if anyone is interested in sports, and even customizing to a whole new country, a completely different culture. You will have a lot of support at smaller colleges. And we highlighted this before, but we are typically residential campus, requiring anywhere between 1 or 4 years of living on campus in order to create that living and learning community, not just inside of our classrooms, but outside as well. And so again, a little later on in our presentation, we'll talk about what type of requirements both our institutions require, the differences between living on campus versus off campus. How do you even apply for housing? We will talk through it all. But this is just a very brief overview of what it means to be a liberal arts college.
So Jen and I are here partially because we are part of an organization together called the Colleges That Change Lives. It's a pretty well-known organization within the college search culture in the United States, but very much growing internationally. And all of that relationship actually started from a book. The book is called The Colleges That Change Lives, 40 Schools That'll Change the Way You Think About College. Colleges That Change Lives was written by a man named Loren Pope. Loren was, back in the 1950s, the education editor for the New York Times. And he, at that time, was really discouraged about the way that people were choosing colleges and universities, and felt like that the only thing that was really out there was knowing the name of a school. And he never felt like that was the right reason to choose a school. That didn't mean a school was good for that particular person. And so in the mid to late 1960s, he actually started one of the very first independent educational consulting and research companies here in the United States, and really wanted to focus his efforts on making sure that students and families were well informed about the college admissions process, how they could find data, how they could find research, in order to help make sure that you were choosing colleges for the right reasons. So Loren was a really strong advocate for liberal arts colleges, and particularly small liberal arts colleges, because he really felt like the smaller the school, a lot of times they were maybe less selective, but offered a really strong education, and they were just not schools that anybody had really known. You know, when you think of college search, you hear Harvard, you hear Yale, you hear Stanford, UCLA. You know, those were big name schools, and people just assumed because you knew the name that meant they were the best schools to go to. But he really wanted to make sure that students knew that there was a lot of different options out there. He wanted people to think more broadly about how you went about the college search, and making sure that you thought about what it was that you wanted in a college, in effort to help kind of really refine your search for the process. So he released a lot of different research over his career, wrote a couple different books, but his best-selling book was this Colleges That Change Lives, 40 Schools That'll Change the Way You Think About College. And this book came from all of the research he had done over his career. He had done some secret shopping of institutions by visiting them, getting to talk with professors, getting to talk with students, getting to talk with admissions, and really kind of getting to know what these schools were all about. And so a lot of his focus was on these smaller liberal arts schools like a Beloit and Goucher. He first published the Colleges That Change Lives book in 1996, but actually came out with a couple different editions throughout time, 1996, 2000, and his final edition that he wrote in 2006. And then he passed away in 2008, but the family of Lauren Pope actually hired another writer to continue in Lauren's legacy. So you'll learn that over time, there was a couple schools that maybe left a book, or some new schools that kind of came into the books. So there's actually 44 schools now that I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. But Lauren just was about making sure that students were a big part of their college search, and they were choosing schools on fit rather than what people were saying about them. He really felt that students were going to have the most success in their educational experiences if they were choosing a school really based on what was going to be best for them and where they were going to really thrive both academically and maybe with that rigor, but engaging themselves into the classroom, engaging themselves in things like internships and research, and really heightening what they were learning throughout their four-year experience. So in 2006, a couple of the institutions from the book got together and, really said, this is a great way for us to come together and really talk about these things, talk about fit, talk about the importance of residential living and learning communities, and making sure that students thought about their college search a little bit differently. And so the Colleges That Change Lives organization, or as we're really known, the ctcl.org organization, was established as a non-for-profit organization here in the US. That philosophy of the organization really remains true to Lauren Pope's legacy, helping students create lists of schools that were the right fit and not just those big name schools that you knew. He was a big component of sort of staying away from the rankings or not letting the rankings fully drive your college search. And that's one of the philosophies of CTCL. It can be a factor, but it shouldn't be the utmost factor of how you choose a college. The goal is that for when choosing a college, you're choosing a life of lifelong learning. And so you want an education that's going to prepare you for that lifelong learning aspect and help create that foundation. And the CTCL organization is true to helping families in the same way that Lauren Pope did, in making sure that they have a really quality undergraduate experience that's going to really help increase their future outcomes in life. And so the organization itself actually has 44 college and university members representing over 26 different US states with an average of enrollment of just over 1,500 students. So we're all very small and committed to that living and learning residential community. And with that, I will pass it over to Jen to talk a little bit about some of those things that I've talked about with CTCL, what our philosophies are, and how that can help drive your own college search.
Thanks, Erin. That was a great explanation of CTCL. I learned a lot. So now let's talk about kind of what to do. What are your next steps when you are going through this college search process? I love talking about this because I love to be super organized, especially when there are literally thousands of schools out there. And guess what? We're all different. in a little way or either a large way. So it's really important to stay organized. So first thing foremost, it's important to learn about the general US higher education system. Of course, as you are looking at schools in the US and Canada or UK or wherever you go and end up going, it's important to learn about their higher education system. Now, within the US system, there are different types of institutions, like mentioned. Today, Beloit and Goucher are liberal arts colleges, but you heard me mention large research institution earlier. So typically these could be your large flagships, which has over 10 or 20,000 students, that there's a large focus on research. The faculty are doing research, lots of students are doing research. There's also community colleges, which is an amazing gateway for students who are looking to just learn a little bit about or getting more familiar with the US education system. Also helps to save a lot of money. There are many community colleges all throughout the US that provide pathways for students to then apply to four-year colleges after they complete an associate's degree at a community college. So those are just three of the different main types of institutions that you will probably come across as you are doing your research. Now, it's really important to connect with people who can help, whether it be your EducationUSA advisors, your school counselors, teachers, friends, college counselors, Erin and I. So you'll learn that at every single college that you are interested in, there's a person like us that represents that college that you can reach out to and ask those questions. You can go to Erin and say, hey, Erin, I heard this about your school. Is it true? I read it on Google, but I'm not sure. And then you can come to me and say, hey, Erin told me this about Beloit. Is Goucher the same or are you different? So it's really good to know that we are here to help you. That is our jobs. This is what we love to do, is connecting with you all, students, parents, counselors. We're here to serve as a resource. So I mentioned earlier to stay really organized, because trust me, it's very important as you are determining what you are looking for in a school. And so you heard Erin throw around the word fit a lot. Your best fit, or looking for a school that is a good fit for you. Now, what is a good fit, right? So a good fit, I like to think of is like your favorite dress or your favorite pair of jeans, right? When you're going shopping, there's different types of colors, sizes, styles, but you have your preference, right? And so when you are looking at schools, it's kind of the same thing. What is your budget? How much is this going to cost you to attend this school? Does the school have a major that you're interested in? If you have no idea what you want to major in, do they have the resources that will help you decide what you're interested in or want to do for the rest of your life, potentially? Are you looking for a large school? Are you looking for a small school? Location, that's really important because the US is very large. There's over, I believe, 4,000 different colleges all spread out in the US. And so do you want to be near a beach? Do you want to be near a city? Do you want to be out in the woods? It really is your preference. And then, of course, climate. One of the great things about the US is that depending on where you are, you get to experience all 4 seasons. Or if you like warmer weather, there are certain parts of the US where it's warm all year round or cold all year round. So it's really up to you and your preference. So my recommendation always to all students that I speak to is create a spreadsheet, whether you use Excel or Google Sheets or Microsoft, or even a notebook or a piece of paper. Create a list or a spreadsheet, write down all of the things that you are looking for in a school that you think will be the best fit for you. And then that way you can stay organized and narrow down your options, because I'm sure you'll have a ton. And then after that, you should research those specific schools. Check out school websites. A lot of schools now have virtual tours offered. Thank you to COVID. Before that, you would have to come in person to do a tour, but now you can do a virtual tour just by registering on most of the school's websites, attending college fairs, whether that's in person or virtual. I'm glad that we are starting to move back to in person because trust me, we miss you, we miss seeing you and interacting with you, but we're also very grateful for a virtual platform where we can connect with you like we are tonight or your day. And then again, reach out to the school's admissions offices. Again, we are here to help you, to guide you, and to your surprise, you might think that Goucher and Beloit are competitors because we're similar schools, but at the end of the day, our jobs are to help you find the best fit for you. So even if Goucher might not be the best fit, maybe I can help you connect with Erin or another liberal arts college, connect with their counselor and see if that school might be a better fit for you. So again, we are here to help you through the process. Right, so now let's jump into living on campus and why is that important? So I mentioned earlier, most liberal arts colleges, I know Goucher does, require you to live on campus for 4 years, or at least we guarantee housing for 4 years. And the goal here is to really create a campus community, not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. So we're going to highlight that when we talk a little bit about our own separate colleges. But studies have shown that living on campus has been linked to increases in cultural and intellectual values, self-perception and self-esteem, autonomy and independence, gains in tolerance, empathy, and interpersonal skills, along with persistence in college and degree attainment. So something that I really like to share with students is that you can argue with me here, but the number one factor that leads to student success at any college is your friends, or the people that you connect with, whether it's on the same floor as you or in the same building as you, or even across campus. If you're living on campus, you get to spend more time together. If you have a program going on one night that you want your friends to go to, or you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm going to movie night. Would you want to join me to watch the new Marvel movie? Or we are having a international cooking class. Do you want to come join me and let's make a dish from all of these different cuisines and countries? And so it's a really great way for students to come together, create meaningful friendships that'll really last you a lifetime. My college roommate, I went to a liberal arts college as well, is now my soul sister, my best friend. She is getting married next year. I'm going to be in her wedding. I will probably be the godmother of her children. And so you really get to create these really strong, meaningful relationships at a liberal arts college and living on campus. And students really do feel a strong sense of belonging when they're together rather than just kind of siloed apart, whether staying in their rooms or going home every weekend, which is fine because we, folks have responsibilities and other things that they have to do. But again, studies do show that when you live on campus, you are exposed to a whole different experience than if you were not. Anything else you'd like to add, Erin, if there was anything that I missed?
No, that's great. So just to go a little bit into some of the actual experiences that you'll get by living on a residential campus is that strong support network. So you continue to hear us say words like living and learning community. While living on campus, you're getting to know new people, new friends. You're getting to know administration and faculty. So you often know who to turn to if you're, maybe having a problem or you have some really cool academic interests that you're trying to figure out. You're going to know those faculty member, and those faculty member may be referring you to another faculty member or professor to help you really achieve those goals that you want to do. So One of the things that I've really found just amazing is to watch how students learn to network and take advantage of the network opportunities that they have on these residential campuses. And Jen mentioned it just before, but these faculty members really become your mentors. They are at our institution. So as we mentioned in the very beginning, liberal arts colleges are often undergraduate focused. Those faculty members, those professors are specifically teaching at our institutions because they want to teach students. Where you may find at some larger institutions, a lot of professors are not necessarily teaching the classes. Their classes are being taught by teachers' assistants or graduate assistants, and you may not have first line access to that professor, where at the undergraduate kind of liberal arts college you will, and they really become strong mentors to you and help guide you through your academics, but also through your career and beyond your time at that liberal arts college. One of the things that I think is often overlooked as a skill well developed at a liberal arts college is we encourage students to take risks and help them really understand what it's like if they fail it, and how to get back up and how you kind of move forward. It's not a skill people want to have, but it's a great skill to develop. And really being able to learn how to take risks. That's what's going to make you very successful in your own personal life, but in your career as well. I think it's often a misconception that small schools don't have the same level of resources that some of the large schools do, but I think you find at the liberal arts colleges and in these residential experiences that students are always doing research, whether that's in research they're doing independently or research they're doing with one of their faculty members. There's usually a lot of opportunities, and faculty members help students find these opportunities or help encourage these students to these opportunities. So you're really getting a lot of hands-on exposure to your field, both in and out of the classroom. You are also developing a lot of skills within this. So, you are not always doing this by yourself, but really getting to know what it's like to work in a team, maybe take the leadership role in a team, or just know how to work among your peers. You're often solving real world problems. The way that many of us our schools teach classes is not by lecture, but more by engaging discussion and really taking the concepts you're learning in a subject and knowing how to apply them to real things that are happening in the world, or real problems that you may encounter. Friends. Getting to know your fellow classmates. I think that's one of the biggest things about our residential college, and the fact that it plays such a big role in your overall success is that the ability to meet new people, learn about new cultures, engage yourself in different activities. Those are the things that really help make you successful, because it's helping you take maybe what you are learning in your academic classes and finding ways to apply that and develop a whole different level of skills beyond the classroom. In the cross-cultural experiences, I think when you hear us talk about our own institution, our own residential experiences, you're going to find that students at these schools are often really engaged in learning about a lot of different cultures and thinking differently about the way that you may approach learning or working with different teams or working with people in very unique ways. And so there's a lot to be gained from these residential experiences at our schools. Jen, anything to add?
Nope. I think we can go on and start talking about our institutions.
Great. So we're going to present to you guys a little bit about our own residential colleges. So I represent, as I mentioned, Beloit College. We are a 4-year residential liberal arts and sciences college. We do require that our students live on campus for at least 3 years, but most of our students do live on campus all 4. And when we talk about on campus, we are talking about a lot of different types of housing, or housing that is sort of owned and maintained and run by the institution themselves. At Beloit, we have a specific set of learning outcomes that we want students to really achieve over their experience with us. And these learning outcomes are applied in a lot of different ways. They're obviously going to be applied through your classroom experiences, but whether you're in clubs and organizations, athletic sports or intramural sports, if you're taking a job on campus, we're hoping that you're sort of gaining and developing these skill sets, to be a productive collaborator, to be an effective communicator, to be a creative problem solver, and to be intellectually and professionally agile. You know, these are skill sets that we really kind of throw into everything that we're doing at Beloit through that residential experience. So we are a school of just over 1,200 students. We're located about an hour and a half northwest of Chicago. So we're kind of right in the center of the United States. And 96% of our students do live on campus sort of all 4 years. So there's only a small percentage that lives off campus. So in off-campus apartments or living at home with parents. So we really do encourage that experience. A lot of different opportunities for housing options. So at Beloit, we have 15 residential halls and apartment buildings within our campus. And we also have 17 special interest houses. So we live in our campus is within a residential community in the city of Beloit, Wisconsin. And so over years, we bought some houses right around the outside of our campus or as part of our campus, and have turned them into special interest houses. We actually have a Japanese house. We have things like the Beloit Science Fantasy Fiction Association, Psychology House, Anthropology House, Music House. So lots of different opportunities for you to live in communities that share a common interest. We also are a very active campus. For only 1,200 students, we have over 55 different clubs and organizations for you to participate in. At Beloit, our average class size tends to be about 15 to 18 students. So you can see in the corner there, we have very few classes, maybe only one that actually is sort of more than kind of 25 students. And that's very intentional. We want you to have that strong mentor experience with faculty members on our campus. You're really getting to know your students in the classroom, you're getting to know your professors, and they're all getting to know you as well. At Beloit, we really focus on a 4-year sort of advising and mentorship structure that begins before you even step foot on our campus. That is through our program called the Advanced Mentor Program, or for short, we call it AMP. But the AMP program, within 72 hours of you submitting your enrollment deposit to attend, we already connect you with your first mentor, a faculty member on campus that is likely in your academic interest, who's going to start having conversations with you, trying to get to know you, what you're interested in, what you're hoping to accomplish, what you're not sure about, and helping kind of bridge you into our campus community. That is a program that is a full sort of first-year program that really helps with your transition into college and college in the United States. And then over kind of the 4-year experience, we have something called career channels. Our career channels are sort of broad in scope, but designed to really help you see pathways of kind of combining your academic and co-curricular experiences towards your professional career. So our career channels are things like business and entrepreneurship, sustainability, world building, health and healing, sports and recreation, curating and communicating. So those are just some examples of the different career channels that you can engage yourself in, where you're getting to know alumni, professors, other students. You're getting to learn about internship and research opportunities and see different pathways through possible careers for you. Because it's likely that some of the things that you guys are interested in right now and the jobs that you'll hold later on in your life may not exist yet. And so the skill development and things like networking that you're going to develop through a liberal arts education is really going to help prepare you for those future careers. There's a QR code there. If you'd like to learn more information about Beloit, you can scan that code. But otherwise, this just tells you a little bit about the residential experience at Beloit. I'll pass it off to Jen to talk about Goucher.
Thanks, Erin. And so you'll probably hear that Goucher and Beloit have a lot of similarities. So I do want to touch on a couple of things that do make us different. And so first and foremost, we are located, as I mentioned, in Baltimore, Maryland. If you're not familiar with where that is, the next slide should show you a nice visual. There it is. Baltimore, we are located just about an hour and a half away from Washington, D.C., which is our nation's capital. So if no one has been there before, our campus, like other small liberal arts colleges, looks very pretty, lots of trees, lots of grass, lots of smaller buildings. However, we're one of the smaller schools that are located just right in the city. So when you need some peace and quiet, we do have that on campus, but when you're looking to explore and go out, we're actually just a 15-minute walk away from Towson University, which is a large university in the Baltimore area. And so we actually have about 1,100 undergraduate students. I think this the number on the screen is a little outdated, but that was, I believe, pre-COVID. So we currently have about 1,100 undergraduate students. We also have about 900 graduate students, but they are all online. And so we mentioned a lot before about liberal arts colleges really focusing on that undergraduate population. Goucher students or undergraduate Goucher students do not compete for the resources that we have because we are primarily an undergraduate school. About half of our students do identify as students of color, and they're from all around the world. And so you'll see on the next slide a couple of things that, a few things that make us different, other than the fact that we have students that are represented from all over the world. Over 60 countries and over 45 states are represented on our campus. But the number one thing that makes us different is that we are 100% study abroad. So what that means is that if you decide to attend Goucher, you will be required to study abroad. Now, we do typically encourage our international students to study abroad somewhere else other than your home country. Though it is possible for you to study abroad in your home country, we do encourage students to go off and explore the rest of the world. There is at no additional cost. This is embedded into your Goucher tuition and fees. And so we are the original school that had required our students to study abroad back in 2006. There are only 2 schools right now in the US that require for students to study abroad. So I think that we have a huge emphasis on global education, global learning, and our students really understand what it means to be culturally competent. I won't mention the other things on here just because I don't want to be too repetitive, but in terms of how active our students are, it's very similar to Beloit, lots of ways to get involved. Now, in terms of residential life, I saw a couple of questions about how do I choose a dorm, or how do I figure out where should I live, on campus or off campus? And so before we go even into the residential life at Goucher, most of the colleges that you apply to and get admitted to, there is typically a form that is through the Office of Residence Life that students will be required to complete. And it's kind of like a survey to gauge what type of student you are. What are your habits? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Do you like to study in your room, or do you like to study in the library? What are your hobbies? Do you like music? Are you an athlete? Are you a dancer? Things like that. And so what this form does is that the Office of Residence Life will collect all of these forms and then will typically randomize or pair you up with a student that will best match to be your roommate. For the most part, I believe on all of our campuses, there is a specific area on campus that is specific to first years and up. And so at Goucher, we have what's called the first year village. And you see, for those who can see on the top photo, the first year village is actually the newest buildings on our campus. And so for our freshman students, that's pretty sweet because they're getting some of the newest type of housing on our campus. And so the first year village is made up of 3 buildings with a center that's kind of grassy area. There's hammocks and a fire pit, an area for students to gather outside. But one of the really great things that I think in terms of the design of our first year village is that it was all very intentional. And so we really wanted to make sure that our students are interacting with each other in person, because we believe that this generation is the generation of social media and being on your phones, and you are able to connect with your friends so easily by texting them or calling them or reaching out to them on social media. But the way that these buildings were designed is that actually on every single floor, in order to either go up or down, you have to pass through a lounge. And so that way, that will increase your chances of running into your roommates or housemates and other folks that live in your building. Each building also has a large area, a gathering space at the bottom, where there's either a large projector for movie nights. We have a demo kitchen that has a camera where you can record yourself making recipes and cooking. We also have a wellness center for students to come together and do yoga or any type of fitness and wellness activities. So we are really intentional about our students coming together that way and making friends that way. Housing is also available during breaks at some, not all schools, but typically spring breaks and winter breaks. Instead of, for our international students, we do offer housing, temporary housing during the breaks to make it a little bit more accessible for students as well. So that's all we have for our presentation. We do have some time left for Q&A. So I do see that there are a couple of questions in there. So Erin and I will take a look and then see how we can answer your questions.
Jen, do you want to start with the first question?
I can, yeah. So the first question was, what are differences between dormitories on campus and off campus? Please tell me what to consider when choosing which type of dormitory to live. Please also let me know the merits and demerits of dormitories on campus and off campus. So I think Erin highlighted a lot of the differences between living on campus and off campus, but the primary difference is that essentially if you're living on campus, this is housing that belongs to the college. And if it's off campus, it's typically apartment style living or private property that students can rent and then commute onto campus. And when I say commute, it could be as close as you walking out the door and then taking a 2-minute walk and you are there to class, or you can commute, whether that's taking a bus or shuttle or driving because you are living with a host family or something like that. But I did talk about the process of how to choose the dormitory, or what we call residence halls. So at Goucher, like I said, we have the first year village that is designed for our first years. So you don't get to necessarily choose exactly which room if you were to give a map and then select, oh, I want this room on this floor. We place you in those rooms, but there are special interest housing depending on the school that you go to. At Goucher, there are surprisingly a lot of singles, but small enough where you are not gathering in your room. And so that's what the lounge spaces are, for you to really get out and be within the community. So any different at Beloit, Erin?
Nope, same. Yep. So we require our students enrolling to complete a housing questionnaire in the same way that asks things like, what are your study habits? Do you like to study in your room? Do you like to study in a library? What are your sleeping habits? Do you like to go, are you an early riser? Are you a night owl? Because we want to try to pair you with someone who shares some of the same common things. I think that's really what helps students be able to be on similar schedules, to get to know each other, and really helps it in building that lifelong connection where you are godparents to your friends' children and in their weddings and all of that. So another question we've got is, do other universities have interest housing? Is it common like on campus housing? So I would say not all, but I think you would find that there's quite a few schools out there that have sort of the special interest houses like we have at Beloit. There's different types of housing available. So like we have sort of these interest ones. There's different styles where Jenn talked about this a little bit, but there's like your typical double room that you've seen in the movies where you're sharing that with a roommate. There's single rooms, there's apartment style rooms where there might be 4 of you, but you're each getting your own room and you share common spaces. Some rooms will have a bathroom in them, some won't, some will have a sink, some won't. So they all are different. But one sort of commonality that you may see at more institutions when it comes to special interest houses are something called like Greek life houses with sororities and fraternities. This is a little bit more common practice. So sororities and fraternities are sort of sisterhood and brotherhood organizations that have sort of a common interest built off of the Greek alphabet. They have sort of their own mission, and students can rush to be part of these different organizations, and they may have houses that you live within those communities and sharing sort of that common interest and common practice.
So next question we have is, I heard the college graduation rate is higher among students living on campus than those living off campus. Do you know the reasons of why students decide not to live on campus? So that's a great question. And so just based on my own experience, the students that typically commute just have other responsibilities, typically, whether they have a job that will not require them to live on campus, or they just have off-campus options. It's a way for students to save money as well. Again, depending on the school that you attend and depending on the type of financial package that you receive. Typically at the four-year liberal arts colleges, when you receive your decision letter, whether or not you were admitted, you will also receive the financial aid package, which would include any merit scholarship if the school offers it, or any type of financial support if the school offers it. And so typically room and board is included within the total sticker price in addition to the tuition. And so I think living off campus is a great way for students to simply save money, and if they have a job or if they're living with a host family. But we do encourage students to live on campus, again, to build that community, to have those connections, and so forth.
The next question is I heard that students have to get out of the dorms during winter and summer vacations. Is that true? If so, what do you do in those cases? So Jenn just talked about this with Goucher, and it's very similar with Beloit too. So there's typically a couple different types of breaks you'll see on campus. So some schools have a fall break. Most schools will have sort of a spring break. You don't have to get off campus for those. At Beloit, we provide housing available to students for winter break and summer breaks as well, in the same way that Goucher does. It does have an additional fee to it, so it's not always included in the regular sort of room and board structure for the academic year. But we do charge a very reasonable, the lowest rate we possibly can, so that you can have a space, but we also allow our students to work over those breaks too. So as an international student in the United States, you're pretty much only allowed to work on campus unless you apply for a different part of your I-20 student visa called CPT or OPT. So typically, if you're living on campus over breaks, you can usually find an on-campus job to help support and pay for those break expenses. But we will never let someone go homeless. We're always going to provide a place for them to stay over breaks.
Would it be possible to request a room change if there is an issue at a residence hall? So when you are living within a residence hall, you will be assigned to a person that's typically called an RA, the residence assistant, which is usually another student that attends the institution. And so typically the first line of defense is for you to go to your RA to let them know what is going on, what issues you are having, and then they will try their best to help you resolve that issue. In my first year in college, I did have a roommate issue. And so I went to my RA and we were all able to just talk it out and resolve it there without anyone having to move. But if your RA feels as though the situation is severe enough where they need to bring it up to the residence director, well, then that is a conversation that is to be had to make a request for a room change. So yes, short answer is that it is possible, but there are many ways to try to resolve the conflicts or the issues before going straight into just requesting a room change.
All right, so the next question is, would you tell us about any measures taken in the residence halls to prevent COVID, and will this continue for fall 2022? This is a great question. So yes, lots of changes you saw happening on our campuses, starting really within sort of the fall 2020 semester. So for example, at Beloit, we were actually in person all of the fall 20 fall 2020-21 academic year. We gave our students the choice to be on campus or be remote. We offered sort of a hybrid learning model for the year. And during that time, about 70% of our campus actually came back and studied in person. But during that time, we were at a point with the amount of students on our campus that almost everybody got their own single room for the year. All of our academic classes were spaced out and had particular occupancy numbers. So we wouldn't let any spaces go more than 10 students. Everybody had to be at least 6 feet apart. We were fully masked. You're still seeing masking happening on our campus. So we still require masks for in building spaces. We also, like many institutions in the fall of 2021, made a mandatory requirement for vaccines. So we now at this point are mandatory requirement for vaccines and any boosters you're eligible for. We were doing through the fall 2021 academic year, we were doing biweekly testing of our students. We also had a particular one residence hall that was in isolation and quarantine space. This was a fairly common practice on a lot of US campuses. So we had spaces that if someone did have COVID, we were able to sort of separate them from the general community until they served out sort of that quarantine period or they passed the negative test. Jen, do you have anything to add about Goucher if you guys did anything different? But I think you're going to still see a lot of these same guidelines coming into place even in the fall 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ours is pretty much exactly the same. Yeah. Many Japanese students are concerned about the safety of the US campuses. Can you tell us basic guidelines or advice to keep our safety on campus? That is a wonderful question. And let me just reaffirm that it's not just Japanese students that are concerned, it's students all over the world that are concerned about just general safety on campus. And so a couple of things to note is that most campuses do have a campus police or campus type of security. And so they are typically keeping track of every vehicle that enters and exits campus, making sure that visitors are registered, just to make sure that, you know, we know who is on campus and not. At Goucher, we don't have many folks from outside of the community just walking through campus unless they're residential. And so essentially what that means is that we have folks that live in the neighborhood that have been there for a long time that would love to walk through our beautiful campuses with their children or walking their dogs. So it's still an open and friendly type of environment, though we have safety measures in place. Most campuses also have what's called the blue light system. And so whether you get the chance to come in person or during a virtual tour, you'll see that all around campus there are these poles that have a blue light at the top of them that is linked, that also has a keypad linked to it. And so these are used in emergency cases only. And so if you witness an emergency or witness any suspicious activity, you can go to the blue light, type in to call or dispatch campus security or campus police, and their response rate is typically like within seconds, if not like a minute or two. And so they will come exactly where you are to help make sure that you are okay and that they can resolve your issues. In terms of neighborhood or the cities that we are located in, what I've seen is that, you know, Baltimore is larger than I think what people realize, myself included. I actually just started at Goucher maybe 2 months ago. And so I always thought Baltimore was just this small area by the water and whatever I saw on the news. And typically, as most of us know, the media doesn't always give us the most accurate information based on the different locations. And so a lot of what we hear on the news about Baltimore can be negative. However, the Towson area and where our students typically are not within those areas that you are seeing in the news, and those are typically areas where our students and our community members have no business in being. And so overall, Goucher is a very safe campus. Our students are going off campus, and as I said, community members are joining us on campus as well. What about you, Erin?
A lot of the same. We've got everything that you've mentioned at Beloit as well. I mean, our campus is quite enclosed, though we are built within a residential community in the city of Beloit. To walk from one campus to another is 10 minutes. We often say, you know, we have security that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you ever feel uncomfortable or if you're out late and need to get back to your residence hall, they're always going to be welcoming to come pick you up and drive you back. Because we always want to make sure that everybody feels safe on our campus, but it's a very safe community to be a part of. Great.
So we have one last question in the Q&A. What kind of person is suited for staying with a host family? Erin, if you don't mind taking that question.
Sure. So host family programs are sort of dependent on institutions. So at Beloit, we don't have a host family program that you would live with a family, but we do offer sort of a host family program where it might be a family that you're hanging out with on weekends or special US holidays, just a way for you to get acclimated with American culture. However, there are institutions, you see this a lot with community colleges in the United States, where you may be partnered with a host family program where you're living with a US family and going to the area community college. This, I think, is more common at schools that may not have its own residential facility. And so it just really sort of depends more on the school than whether or not you're the right fit for a host family program.
Thank you, Erin and Jenn. Thank you so much for your excellent presentation and answering questions. That was very informative and useful. I learned about the value of living on campus and your institutions. Do you have any final words for those who would like to study in the United States?
I feel like we gave you a lot of information. So I think my final word would be just thank you for attending and wanting to learn more about residential communities. I did put both my contact and Jen's contact in the chat. So if you have any further questions about residential schools, liberal arts colleges, CTCL, or our institutions in general, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help counsel you and give you any advice that we can.
Yeah, and my last piece would really be, I think, through the pandemic, we've seen a lot of changes. And I think one of the changes that we're starting to really see is this push for liberal arts education. As Erin mentioned before, you know, students are used to hearing the brand name, big Ivies, Yale, BU, Harvard. But I think the more we progress with the times, students are really starting to value that liberal arts type of education. And so what I like to say is that we're here, we exist, we're waiting for you. We are small, but we are mighty. And so now that we are starting to transition back on the road and traveling, we hope to see you in the fall during our recruitments. And we are so excited to connect with all of you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I'd like to thank again for our speakers and audience for attending this webinar. I'd like to remind everyone again that we are going to have a virtual CAS fair and webinars this Saturday. And the Beloit College is going to have a booth as well. So please come and participate. We are looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you for attending. I hope you have a great day.